Hey guys, welcome back to AFK Journey. In today's video, we are on day 2 of Ludovic, and I wanted to talk about some of the results this guy is seeing. We have seen him become meta in the first boss of his test run. He has not seen anything yet in today's boss. I want to talk about some bosses where I think he will work because people have found out the way to actually make him deal damage, and he can deal a bunch of damage, but it is conditional, and I want to talk about which bosses I think he is going to be decent at this, and I will continue to track it across the week and come back to you guys with final results of Ludovic and where he is going to be meta in. Now, one thing to consider, the big thing to consider is when we look at a bunch of the damage. Now, all of his additional damage that he has, for instance, this one, I believe it's every instance of damage that he has in his kit, except for this one. No, that's that one included. When he moves the Everbloom field, you can see that it says it moves the field to the weakest ally and absorbs percentage of the nearest non-summoning enemy's HP. Now, what it appears, and once again, this is still only day 2 of testing, but it appears like for this to actually function, the enemy has to be in the field. And the field only has a 1 tile diameter, so it's like the center tile and 1 tile around that it hits. So they've got to be adjacent. So you need a melee unit or a unit that's been sucked into melee range of the enemies to be able to proc this additional damage. And that is very important when we look at his bossing capabilities. And once again, if any of this changes, I will update you guys, but I just like to update you guys as we find out more stuff in case you've pulled him and you are trying to make him work. So his damage is centered around having to have the field in range of the enemies, which means having his field on an ally that is in melee range. This makes him pair super well with Talene, or Talene if you will. Because Talene is one of those units that she's gonna put herself in melee range of the enemy, in bossing especially. And that means she's always going to be probably the lowest HP ally on your team because she's continually draining that HP, which allows his field to sit on Talene and then continually be able to deal that damage to the boss. And that is a big thing with his kit. So if we take a look, and massive shout out goes to Barry and Zebo. I'll leave a link to their channels in the description. They were discussing this in one of our Discord groups yesterday. I was waiting for the daily reset because we do have Necro Draven. I was waiting to see if he has any possibility there. We'll talk about that in a sec though, but massive shout out to those boys because they were talking about it. I'm like, boys, how do we get this guy to deal damage? Like, he's just hitting like a wet noodle in testing. And yeah, so his field has to be there. So when we look to other aspects of the game, I think he's always going to be a solid high-end PvP unit, especially paired with Talene. He just has the great synergies. Even if he's not dealing damage, he has the value in PvP. Once again, I'm yet to see anyone in deficit pushing with him, but in bossing, once again, King Croker, he is in the most used, the highest ranked teams over here on server 1. Massive shout out to Season from Analytica for letting me know about Sophie's run that actually cracked into the the 50 billion damage range, which is pretty huge. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. Once again, in this team, and something that's very interesting, we are seeing Freyesto kind of just overtake everything as the bossing unit. His damage is good. His utility in these bosses is fantastic. You know, giving that extra energy regeneration and damage mitigation to an ally whilst bringing this much damage and having tankiness. I'm working on this priority list, and I really want to get it right. But dude, Freyesto just keeps looking better and better as we go. But you can see in this team, if we go to the formation here, this is the formation. They're not even worried about getting the Freyesto additional benefits. Literally, like, Freyesto's not even stressed about that. We've just got the damage mitigation on 1, and that's pretty much what we're looking at because King Croker's bombs can do, like, his spit bomb, not his one-hit KO bomb. His other bombs can just do ridiculous amounts. So that's what we're looking at. And as you can see him, he's placed in the back here. But the idea with this team is because we also have Smokey in it, the entire team should be, say, pretty well topped off for most of the time, meaning that Talene is the one continually draining her HP, which means his field should stay on that Talene. So let's go ahead and take a look at this replay. We will slow it down and then we'll talk about the other bosses. So as you can see here, we run in, we get into the zone. And now the field is going to move, and it's on the tanks because the tanks are in that range because Talene hasn't started channeling. So now we are channeling, but the great thing is, even if he does his sweep and maybe one of the Freyestos or something gets low, that field is going to stay in that melee range. You can see it just moved to the Freyesto, I think it is. And it's still, I believe that positioning there is still in range. That is definitely in range of dealing damage. And so that is the big thing. Now, what I am uncertain on is whether, and you can see here, it's going to move to the Thorin because the Thorin died and revived, but it didn't have to move. It didn't have to move because his proc time, because it is like a 4-second cooldown on his moving of it, it obviously didn't go to the Thorin. But as you can see, that field is staying in the melee. Now, this position, I believe it's not dealing damage, but then it moves straight away again and gets back in there. So what I'm curious to see, and I don't know if I'm going to pull for this guy to check it, but the thing is whether without Freyesto this still functions, or whether if you got more ranged units, his water bombs will come to the back row. As you can see, it's down on Smokey at the moment, so that is a loss in DPS. So I don't know if this is going to be the same thing apply. And once again, the idea is that Taylene is the one normally getting chunked, but because his water bombs do damage, depending on timing of when he moves it, he is sometimes, once again, like he moved it to Smokey earlier on, he is sometimes going to move it out of range. But the idea with this team is we're normally going to be keeping it in that melee range. So you can see here, he just moves it to Smokey. So that is less than ideal. But once again, I'm curious to see without Freyesto, if you had another ranged unit, that would mean his water bomb is going to be going further back more of the time, putting your ranged units lower, and then bringing that field out further. So once again, this is the current meta team that we are seeing, but because it used for Freyesto as well, I'm not too sure if this will be as practical for people that don't have Freyesto and Taylene. And that is the thing. I have accounts on a bunch of different servers that I go in just so I can check rankings, and I haven't really seen him in the rankings in any other servers. Let me know on your servers if you guys have seen it, or what do they call it? Districts. I haven't seen him ranking in many of the other districts except for the Giga Whale districts where people have these synergies. So I thought if he was, I would see it in more places, but if you do, hit me up on Discord with some screenshots and show me some teams without the whale units of him working. I'm curious to see. I think Taylene is his one main synergy that is a hyper synergy, but like I said, in this team, the fact that we have Freyesto and Thorin in melee really does add to that, like that suitability of him in it, allowing him to deal more damage, because at the end of the day, we have a bunch of those other healers that can heal. And as you can see in this battle here, he actually did more damage. Can I just say how crazy Smokey's damage is, considering he does that much damage in 10 seconds? Like, Smokey's just cracked. But you can definitely see that he is doing a good amount of damage, and for him to be contributing to the team more than some of the other units like Coco, for instance, who also buffs attack, he has to be dealing that damage. So you have to be getting that field into the melee range for it to apply. So that is what we're looking at. Yes, he is in the meta team. Whether this makes him good enough for more free-to-play players to pull, I didn't see teams yesterday in Croker that utilized him without having the Celestial Hypergene units. So once again, we will have to wait and see. It is still very early days, but I just wanted to update on you guys on this to let you know he does do damage. Like, he does do damage with all that damage in his kit, but it is not the most reliable. Keep in mind in this battle as well, Taylene doesn't do the most damage because she does get interrupted by the swipe, and I don't know if she got killed in that battle, but in a battle like Necro, or no, not Necro, like Skyops or Lone Gaze, you're going to see much bigger results out of Taylene if she's being used in there, because she can channel the whole battle. For instance, if we go over here, just go do the Necro real quick. Not the Necro, dude, I was getting Skyops. Okay, here we go. Here's one with Taylene, and I just want to have a look at her damage capacity. You can see she's like out damaging merrily there. She can get some pretty big damage, and she's like way higher than that. So when she can channel an entire boss, she does do a lot more damage, but in general, she's working pretty well. Let's take a look at this one with the Taylene. That one, she probably that is insane damage out of the Pesto. Holy crap. I think with these guys at this much power, she's probably dying as well in Lone Gaze because there's that much pressure. Whereas on my, you know, my pitiful account, she ain't dying. So that's what we're looking at. But once again, we got over into Necro. I was waiting to see if we saw him pop up in Necro. Keep in mind, this is the District 1 on Global. So this is like the Giga Whale district where we see people using like things at the most optimal. And in Necro, he just hasn't found a spot. I think Necro is just too hard to pass up on just damage amplification and the moving units, and Rainier is going to hold a spot in here pretty well for a long time. I think just because he is that one source of healing that can continue throughout the battle until we get a healer that actually moves that can work in Necro for that. But besides that, I don't really see this type of meta shifting too much. Like, I don't see any other healers getting a spot into Necro until we get a healer that can move. And I feel like Rainier is the only one that's really going to have healing utility in this boss for like the peak of the peak until we get anything else. And when you look at this, the rest of these units, they're not cell hypos. And same down here, they're not cell hypos. There's one down here that's got Pesto in it. This one's got Scarlita, but you can see these higher ones, they obviously... We got a bunch of Paragons in here, but you can do it with just the standard units and him, and I don't see that changing. So Necro, I don't think he's going to see use. Snow Stomper, I'm curious to see. I don't think he's going to have a crazy amount of viability in Snow Stomper. Once again, this is just my predictions. This is not confirmed because we haven't tested it yet. The reason being is because I feel like the field is going to continually move, even if you have a bunch of melee units where you're getting the pedal field, whatever the shit's called. If you've got that on your melee units because they're close to the boss, once a unit gets frozen, they're going to run away, and then he's going to move it away, and then it's going to have lag time before it can get back there. But also the frozen unit may be taking the damage, and then that happens. Also, the Snow Stomper throws the rocks, which will get like random units low, which means he'll then move the field. So I don't think he will be meta in Snow Stomper due to the field not being able to sit in melee range on the boss for long enough periods of time, due to the just mechanics of the boss, hitting enemies at the back, melee units running away from the boss, all that stuff. I just don't see it, but once again, could be wrong. Lone Gaze. Lone Gaze is an interesting one. I don't think he's going to be meta in Lone Gaze. I know he pairs super well with Talene, and Talene is seeing meta usage in Lone Gaze. However, when we look at this, if we, for instance, just have a look at this, because I use this team as well, if we look at Talene's utility here, just restarting this because my face cam froze, but if we look at Talene's utility here, I'm just going to pop it on 3 times speed. If she wants to be hitting him, she's got to be at this back position, meaning when the boss runs back, his field is probably never going to be in melee range because the melee units in there aren't taking the damage, because it's the units up the back getting hit by the wolves that are going to be getting the damage, and that's where I think his field is going to be centered. So when he does come forward, maybe sometimes he does get into range of the field, but I don't think the field is going to have enough uptime in this fight for him to be worth it over something like a... I mean, to be fair, this does have... I just don't think he's going to replace Coco or something like that in this team. I just see Coco's buff being more valuable to the team than what something like a, you know, like then his field can be, because Coco at least has the buffing and can block that burst damage. And I don't think he replaces Coco or Talene in this one. Sorry, Coco or Smokey. And yes, you could drop Scarlita or Pesto, but then if you drop Pesto, you're running Thorin. If you run Scarlita, you're probably running Odie for damage. So I don't think he's going to squeeze into meta for this one, because I don't think he's going to deal enough damage to replace either of the other 2 healers that we have in this team. I could be wrong. I could be wrong, but that is what I see there. Moving on past that, let's take a look at the other bosses that we have. Alpha Bear, Skyops. Now, Skyops is the other one I can see him being pretty strong in. Once again, we can, if you're running Pesto, if you're running Thorin, that gives you a melee unit. But the big thing is here that we can run Talene. For anyone running Talene, it looks something like this. And once again, because of Talene's ability to continually drain her own health, I believe she will often be one of the lowest health units, and that will allow her to, so you can see here, especially with Pesto, but even without Pesto, I think, because you'll see Talene, she'll start draining her health, and she'll probably be the lowest for most of the time. You can see here, everyone else stays topped up, except when the laser beam comes. Besides that, it's always Talene who is the lowest, because she's the only one who's really effectively losing health. And as you can see there, Talene dropped the lowest. So I do think in Skyops, he could have a position in those Talene teams. But once again, that's just an update on where I think he will be and where he's currently at. Currently in a meta team for Croaker, but I haven't seen him in non-whale teams for Croaker. So the verdict's still out for me. I'm still holding. Maybe once we see results for every boss, maybe it nudges me towards pulling him because I do have a Talene. But without Talene, I think it's an even harder decision to go ahead and pull for this guy. But just wanted to update you guys where we are seeing him. It is good that he can actually deal massive amounts of damage because his kit has so much damage focus, but it is very conditional damage with a very small range, and you've got to be playing it ideally or get good RNG for it to deal the max amount of damage that he is going to output. But that is the update on day 2 of him, of Ludovic. Let me know what you guys think. Once again, if you have any cool teams that you want to show me, just DM me on Discord. My DMs are open and I'll take a look. But yeah, let me know any good thoughts you guys have. Currently a meta in Croaker, waiting to see. I think Skyops is his other possible position, but we'll have to wait and see. But anyway, guys, as always, thanks for watching. Hope you have an awesome day, and I look forward to seeing the next one. Cheers.